So thanks everyone for being on. I'll be your host for tonight. My name is Chris Licarpio. I am the student commission leader of the Freedom Road Socialist or chair of the Freedom Road Socialist Organization. And then co-hosting this event with me is Andy Koch, who is our Freedom Road Socialist Organization staff organizer, and we have 5 speakers ready for you here today to report back from campuses across the United States who have built encampments for Gaza. So before we go into our incredible speakers who have done so much in what looks like a brief amount of time, but actually they've been organizing for a while now, it'll be good to iterate the demands of kind of what this movement was about and what everyone came onto campus for. The people of Palestine who have been oppressed by the US-backed Zionist forces of Israel are in the middle of a revolution, a fight for national liberation, for their lives, for their land, for their people. They're using whatever means they have at their disposal to free their whole people from the river to the sea, as people on this call hopefully chanted at some point in the spring. This meant students walking out of schools, Palestinian workers refusing to work for their Zionist employers, a multifaceted resistance waging a brave struggle, a brave fight against the Israeli occupation forces, even as massacres continue, refusing to give ground, preventing the Israelis from achieving any of their goals. And the FRSO stands in full solidarity with this movement and has for a very long time. And a lot of the student organizers who are on this call stand in solidarity with that movement too. In fact, much of the revolutionary movements today, including the FRSO, we owe a lot of our origins to students rising up against US imperialism in other struggles, like when the Vietnamese waged a war and won, and they also withstood massacres, they withstood entire buildings getting leveled. And it was another case where much of the American people stood in solidarity, but it took a lot of young people, and not just young people, but a lot of young people making business stop and, ending the status quo to make that happen and to deliver a message. We have a shared enemy with these national liberation movements, the billionaires of our country, Wall Street, who enable and devise these wars, and we can our movements can strengthen one another. A blow against Israel teaches the people in the United States a lot. And if the people of the United States can stand up against Wall Street, the funders and creators of Israel, that is the best thing that we can do for the people abroad. The encampment movement for Gaza, the people who led it and who did it will waste no time in telling you that the police and universities did whatever they could to crush the movement, right? They knew how powerful it could become, but their mistake was not knowing that the more they crushed us, the stronger we could be. And every blow they struck at us, we would return 10 times as strong. So tonight you'll hear about the movement to divest and disclose, young people trying to get their schools to end study abroad programs with Israeli institutions, and the funneling of students to Lockheed Martin, Boeing, and weapons manufacturers companies, and its divestments in entities investing in Israel. And you'll hear about building occupations, encampment movements, even now the defense work that people are doing to reinstate students at the schools who were suspended, kicked off campus, to get charges dropped. At the University of South Florida, where I worked and where Tampa Bay SDS is, there was a student who was actually expelled and is still willing to fight for Palestine. And now even an international student who was suspended and is likely to be deported. But that's not stopping anyone from organizing. As people heard, we will not stop, we will not rest until these schools divest, until all U.S. aid stops to Israel and the people of Palestine are free. So I also want to say, too, that as such, we are going to be marching on both the Republican National Convention this summer and the Democratic National Convention this summer. The March on the RNC that we're attending is on July 15th. March on the DNC is going to be August 19th, and then also again on the 22nd. We're going to make our demands loud and clear. And we have actually speakers on this call tonight who represent the Coalition to March and the RNC, as that one is right around the corner, and they're going to tell us concretely what we can do. On June 24th, actually, the Coalition to March and the RNC is going to host All Out for the March and the RNC, which is an online report and online mobilization, so we can plan how to go in a real way. And we want to bring all whom we can bring to turn our ideas into action, and that one is right around the corner. So without further ado, I will bring it over next to our student speakers, and we will start with Rick Toledo from Cal Poly Humboldt, Students for a Democratic Society, who, along with others, took a building on their campus, the administration building. Go ahead, Rick.
Hey all, first off, I just want to say I'm honored to be here. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. I guess the first thing I can talk about is just why we did it. We kind of saw what was happening at Columbia and a lot of other universities, and we had students wanting to do something similarly on our campus. Unlike a lot of other occupations or encampments, ours was a little different in that there wasn't like a leading organization. There were just a lot of students that were concerned and wanted to take action. So we had an emergency meeting, and we had students that weren't part of any organization. We had students from various organizations on campus, and even community members coming together and discussing how we could take action. In our case, we decided it was best to have a sit-in and occupy the admin building. We were the first campus to actually occupy a building in the movement. And we are also a state school. And I believe we were one of the first state schools, if not the first, to enter the movement as well, which was pretty cool. We take a lot of pride in that. And we initially had planned for a sit-in, but when we got there and we started to actually have students move in, there was a fast police response. And as the police escalated and started to commit violence against students, barriers were erected, more defensive measures were taken. And I think for a lot of other encampments and even occupations, maybe they had a solid plan first. This was a little less organized, and we had to really come together as we went and find ways to uphold these barriers and to prevent the police from taking our people. A big part of what made it successful was actually that we had support from the community. We put out calls to the wider community, and they showed up in force. We ended up having people just encircle the police, just well over at least hundreds of people, maybe 1,000 people. It was a lot. And by encircling them and creating a defensive perimeter, we were able to kind of push back. And ultimately, the faculty came together as well after we had been resisting the police for about, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 hours. Faculty came through and pressured the administration to call off the police, and eventually they caved and did, and we ended up holding the administration building for about 8 days in total. During that time, we pushed for certain demands. The main thing that we were trying to do was get them to disclose ties to Israel, whether it be financial or academic, and then to divest from that and break away from Israel. During that period, we had meetings with the administration. We pressured them to do that. We got some stuff shown to us that they were invested in. It wasn't too much. It was maybe like $1 million. But because of that, we said, well, if it's only $1 million, then why aren't you divesting from it? And then there were CSU-wide, we're part of the California State University system. So CSU-wide investments and ties to Israel existed as well. So we started to push for those to be overturned. The administration did not negotiate in good faith. I'm sorry, I have a question here.
If folks want to save their questions until all the 5 speakers are done, so we can get through the speakers. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So the administration did not negotiate in good faith. And I'm sure there's a lot of other campuses who also dealt with that. So it came to the point where we knew that we weren't going to get all of the demands we wanted, and we were going to have to just hold the building as long as possible. And that became the priority, I think, a ways through it. We erected more barriers. We set up fencing. We tried to create as much defense as we could. There were patrols and different shifts. We had mutual aid kitchens set up that would not only feed the students that were part of the occupation, but also people just around campus, people who showed up. We had free food for everybody through them. There was also an emergency medical setup in a non-riot zone that we had set there to keep people safe. So it was pretty, towards the end, it got pretty organized and structured, and we were able to hold out for a while. What ultimately took down our occupation was that they called in police from all over the state. And California is a big state, right? We had cops from as far south as like Channel Islands, which from where we're at, we're up by Oregon. That's like a 10.5 hour drive. So they were just calling in pigs from all over the state, just everywhere. And they were from all different universities. So we know that the CSU system said, call in all of the pigs and bring them all to this campus to shut this down. So that was their response. We couldn't hold out against the army that showed up in riot gear and just fully armed with tear gas and everything else. Students ended up eventually surrendering because our numbers had dwindled. I think people lost morale towards the end and were afraid, rightfully so. But we were able to hold it for 8 days, and we kept pushing after that. And now there was something that was passed to have the entire CSU system divest from Israel, and that has moved to the Board of Trustees. But as we all know, a Board of Trustees is just a corporate board, completely undemocratic, appointed by the governor. Whether or not they will actually follow through with this remains to be seen. And at that point, if they do not, then we will have to escalate further, and we'll have to target the governor as well to get him to take action. So that's where we're at right now. We're still pushing. For us, this was extremely important because of the urgency in Palestine and what's been happening in Rafah, what's been happening in Gaza prior to that, and just the bombing, all the innocents. And we needed to take action. We needed to escalate, and we knew that. So we did. And we did everything we could to hold it out as long as we could. And during that time, we got pictures from Palestinians in Rafah, and they had big thank you signs, and they drew the logo of our university and said thank you. And for us, like, we were tearing up. It was very emotional for us, and it gave us the inspiration and the drive to continue holding out against the pigs, to know that they saw us and that it mattered. And that's why I think we have to keep fighting as well. We can't stop because they're still there. They're still suffering. Israel has moved in on Rafah, and they need our help. We have to do everything that we can because we know that U.S. imperialism is what's behind this. We know that the U.S. is what's financing this. So we have to disrupt things here as much as possible to prevent that, to completely just pull out of this occupation of Palestine. Beyond that, I do want to talk a little bit about the defense work since then. We had a total of 34 students, I believe it was, or not just students, my apologies, one faculty member, students, and community members arrested, about 34 in total with everyone. So there's been a lot of defense work that's been happening. It has been very difficult because we don't have a lot of attorneys that were willing to take the case because we're so far north. We're in this small little city. So we've had to get help from Bay Area attorneys. When everyone was arrested, we had set up a bail fund, and we helped bail people out along with the Anti-Repression Coalition or committee, I believe it is. So we've been active in the defense work from the start with STS Humboldt, even got some help from National STS with that. We've been taking care of people. We have a lot of students who lost their jobs, who are struggling financially. So we've set up hardship grants for them, and we've been making sure that nobody is left behind here. It's been very difficult, and we've had to do a lot of fundraising, but we continue to push for people, and we're ready to escalate the defense work if we need to. Right now, it's been very strange because we don't have charges pressed against most of the people still. The DA has really been dragging their feet on this, but they did press charges against a student who was arrested just for leaving their dorm. Not part of the protest, nothing like that. They left their dorm to get food during the occupation and were arrested by the pigs. So they got charges. So that's been strange, and we've been trying to navigate that, make sure that they have defense as well. But it's an interesting thing that's happening here with the defense work, and we are kind of concerned with how it's developing, and we're going to have to stay on top of that. Finally, I just want to plug something at the end here. STS Humboldt is working on a broader initiative along with Humboldt for Palestine, a local org we're tight with, and some other major orgs to do a massive statewide march in Sacramento, San Francisco, and Los Angeles, as well as where we're at here in Humboldt. It will include some disruptions as well to disrupt business as usual. So keep an eye out for that. And if you're interested and you're part of in Oregon, California, please reach out to the STS Humboldt Instagram, and we'll get back to you and build coalition with you on that.
Excellent. Glad to hear the fight continues all the way in Humboldt and across the state of California. Thank you very much, Rick. Next, we will go to Mira Altobel-Resendez with the University of Minnesota Students for a Democratic Society. Take it away, Mira.
All right. Thank you, Chrisley, and thank you so much, everybody who is on this call. It means a lot to be able to sort of like debrief to other communists and have this audience that we share this understanding of our politics and things like that. So I want to start off by giving sort of a timeline of how the University of Minnesota encampment went. First of all, a little different from how it was at Humboldt. We organized our encampment through a coalition that we established back in November on campus, and that is made up of U of M SDS, obviously, as well as our local chapter of Students for Justice in Palestine, YDSA, and Students for Climate Justice. And so those were like the four main groups that had like the centralized decision-making of the entire encampment, and having that like formal thing ahead of time where we all kind of knew each other already going into this. We had organized with each other before, I think was definitely helpful for us. So we started seriously planning for the encampment after SJP like really pushed us, like, obviously we're gonna like follow our Palestinian local leadership on this, as well as taking our own initiative. We started planning on April 21st to set up the encampment on April 23rd. Obviously, that's not a ton of time, but it was like, let's act quickly as soon as we decide, because, you know, it was finals coming up, graduations were going to be happening. And so it was sort of a tight deadline that was working within sort of like against us, but also within our favor, because since the university wanted us out by graduation so badly, they were extra repressive with the police and everything and the scare tactics. But at the same time, that gave us leverage of, we're going to stay here and mess up all of your fancy graduation plans or whatever if you don't give us what we're demanding here. And so the demands that we created as sort of like, first of all, the things that we were fighting for, but also they served as like our points of unity of, we're here for Palestine. We're not going to lose sight of that. And we were very intentional in making sure that, like, if people are going to be coming to our encampment, they need to understand that this is what it's about, and they need to follow the rules that we made to be able to run everything as smoothly as possible. And so those demands were to divest fully from Israel, of course. That's sort of a blanket one. That's the big goal overall, because that's the material impact that we can have as university students to do what we can to help the people of Palestine. That included banning companies such as Lockheed Martin, Honeywell, Boeing, all of those weapons manufacturers that like to recruit, especially engineering students from our campus to build the weapons that they field test on Palestinians, which is obviously deplorable. To boycott all institutions, militarized institutions in Israel, and the study abroad programs and all of that. To disclose all of the investments in any sort of Israeli entity that we have on campus. To recognize that the Wabit, or the absolute right to return that all Palestinians have to their rightful homeland that was taken from them by the Zionists. And this would be through like actually providing some support for their Palestinian students. You know, after Al-Aqsa flood happened, the administration or president sent out an email that was like, oh, here's all of our resources for our Jewish students. But since then, not a peep about any of the Palestinian, Arab, or Muslim students and what they would do to support them. So complete bullshit, obviously. And then lastly, amnesty for all students, staff, and faculty members who might have faced some sort of repercussions for their pro-Palestine actions on campus. Um, so starting off, we sort of followed Colombia's example with starting to set up our camp at 4 a.m. that first day on the lawn. Not a lot of sleep that night. And then we had everything set up. We have like this beautiful picture of everything. And then by around 6 o'clock that morning, so 2 hours after we all arrived and got there, um, a bunch of police cars pulled up and gave us a dispersal order. And so it was within the first few hours of being at the encampment that we had to like have people on the ground make the decision. Like going into it, we knew that we were probably gonna face arrests and things like that. And so we did have jail support set up ahead of time, thankfully. We just didn't plan on it being so soon. And so we had to decide on the spot, like, okay, who's going to jail? And who has to get out of here? So 9 of us ended up getting arrested that day. We spent the day in jail. We were charged with criminal trespassing, and also all 9 of us were immediately banned from campus for a year, which obviously doesn't make any sense. Myself, I am full-time staff at the university, and so like I couldn't get to my job. The rest of them were students. How are they going to get to their classes? And one of them was even a freshman living in a dorm who now was banned from the part of campus that had their dorm. So how are they supposed to live their life? Obviously. Thankfully, we got out of jail within the day and we came out to like this huge walkout rally that was happening on campus. It was incredible to see, just like after sitting in jail for so long, like eating this sad ass little meal that they gave us for lunch. Just like the impact that seeing like actual campus community members arrested by our own police forces on campus, that only boosted the amount of like, it was like an instant boost of political consciousness. And like friends that I have who have never set foot at a protest were like, I'm there. And it's the biggest protest we've had on campus in a couple of years probably. And so that was incredibly exciting. That told us right away that administration had really shot themselves in the foot with sending the police after us right away, because the people recognize that political repression is what happened and that it's not right. And so I honestly don't think that we would have had the momentum to keep going for the full 2 weeks that we did if it weren't for that first day where we had so many people activated right away by this huge wrongdoing of the university right off the bat, aside from the Zionism and all that, you know. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes here. I wrote a lot down. So for the next 2 weeks, that like weirdest 2 weeks of my life, you know, I'm sure people who are at encampments can relate to that. Like, oh my God, what the hell? But we were constantly having rallies every single day. We were having art builds. We were doing activist skill training so that we could get more people to marshal and sign up for like security things overnight, because we needed to have marshals 24/7 pretty much, which is a lot of work, as again, those of you who did that know. So, and during the first week, the first several days, it was like we were sort of doing guerrilla encampments. And so we were setting up our tents, and like during the day, the police would leave us alone. But as soon as it hit like 10 p.m. and the sun was down and people were off of campus, like outside of the encampment, then they would send riot police, was often their choice. And they'd give us a dispersal order. And then we'd pick up all of our tents and we would simply move to a different area of campus so that we technically weren't on the place that the dispersal order was active for. And then we started again. We were like, you got to give us another dispersal order for us to move or anything. And that first Thursday night, actually, there was a line of riot cops that came out into the streets when we were at our second location. And at this point, it was around midnight. You know, everybody's so tired. And then, like, there were probably 30 people who, like, pretty unplanned, just lined up and were like, we're not going anywhere this time. We're going to wait out the entire dispersal order, sitting or standing in line and chanting just like we did that first day, showing that you're going to have to take us out of here or meet our demands in order for us to go. And then once the dispersal order was up, the riot cops packed up and left. And we got to follow them all the way back to their little precinct thing, chanting at them. It was like, oh my God, like top 3 experiences of my life, chasing riot cops away. That was incredible. And so things like that, I feel like just really show like the power of students, you know, like I don't know, they were like, we're not going to arrest all these students. So I think that was very impressive of us. I don't want to get too into the details of this, but like we had a neo-Nazi come to our encampment too, and he was running around and fucking shit up. He pretended to punch me in the face at one point. That was the whole thing. But he ended up being banned from campus by the campus police when he called the police on us for harassing him, for marshaling him away. Whole thing. So another little victory. We love to see that. But the second week of the encampment, that's when we were finally able to set up in a more permanent way where we were actually staying overnight in the same place. And the police did come and give dispersal orders on their LRAD, like the thing that they would use as a sound cannon if they really wanted to. I know some of us here are familiar with that tactic, but they started giving us dispersal orders like every few hours. And so many people just kept on coming to the encampment and would circle all of the tents, locking hands and everything. And the energy was so high every single time that they just wouldn't do anything. And so our encampment stood for as long as we wanted it to stand because we brought out so many people and they were so activated around the issue of Palestine and divestment that they were willing to put their bodies on the line for us, like knowing like they gave this dispersal order. That means they technically have like reason to arrest us after a certain amount of time. And hardly anybody left. Yeah, it was incredible. But on May 1st, which like shout out to International Workers' Day. What an incredible day for us this was, as well as for workers around the world. We ended up having 3 separate meetings with our campus administration and representatives from our coalition that was leading the encampment, which is historic in itself. The fact that we had like even one meeting directly with the president of the university, who is an interim president, but like, I don't know, he's kind of like really stupid. He let us walk all over him. Like, that's just incredible. That's not something we've done at UMN SDS in a really, really long time. Like we never get those goddamn meetings. And so like that in itself is something to be proud of. But by the end of the day, not only had we had those meetings and that like face-to-face interaction where we were the ones who prepared the agenda, we were the ones coming in on the offensive and saying that if you want us gone by graduation, you're going to have to do this and this and this. You're going to have to meet our demands. And then they did. We came to an agreement where all 6 of our original demands were recognized and acted upon by administration. And like, whoa, like, and one more extra thing, but I can give you like sort of the rundown of what we won there. So we won that they would fully disclose like the finances they have invested in Israel by May 7th, which they did send us like a whole little infographic about what they had invested in Israel on May 7th. We also, as a coalition, passed a divestment resolution through our like student referendum thing to show and won that by 75% majority, which was another thing that showed that students stand with Palestine and students want to see the university divest. This is a popular opinion. And if you are going to be serving your students, maybe you should listen to them. And so the second thing is that at the May Board of Regents meeting, we would have a representative from each group within the coalition speak directly to the Board of Regents and propose like the action items that we came up with as part of that divestment resolution with the full support of administration. And so they wouldn't be able to kick us out or like change their minds or anything. Like we were on that agenda. And we did do that a few weeks later. It was incredible. We made a big stink, all that. That's a whole other conversation. I'm not going to take up our time with that, but hit me up later if you want to hear about that, I guess. We also got bi-weekly meetings with administration, including like the upcoming like new president who's replacing the current interim president. to talk about divestment and the steps that the university is taking towards divestment from Israel and companies complicit in war crimes in general, which like pretty much means like the ones that are very active in Israel, like daily bombing Palestinians and all that, until full divestment is reached. And so those meetings have already started. Just this past week, we already had the first meeting with the incoming new president. And so she already knows the faces of the coalition and the leaders of this movement and everything. And she said herself in that meeting, like, I recognize that this fall is going to be crazy on campus because you all will not let me rest. And she was right. She's right. We're not going to let her rest. Next was public support of Palestinian students, starting with an email to be sent out by the current interim president, who, by the way, is Jeff Ettinger, aka the CEO of Hormel Foods, like the company that made Spam. Why are you our president? It's so weird. Next was opening up a pathway to academic divestment from Israeli universities, aiding in the genocide, as well as establishing relationships with Palestinian universities via meetings with the vice president of provost affairs. I don't know if that's that's what's written there. But that's a big deal. That wasn't even one of our demands, and that's something that they offered to us, and we said, well, obviously, yes, we're going to take that. Like, replace the Israeli universities with the Palestinian universities that still exist on West Bank, because obviously with the scholasticide that's gone on in Gaza, there are no universities there anymore. So it's like a little bit like, okay, like too little too late, buddy, but still a huge gain that we didn't expect. We won amnesty for encampment protesters, and administration having to advocate for the county to drop the charges against the Minnesota Nine, which did happen. And none of us are being charged anymore with any of the criminal shit that we were charged with. And 7 out of 9 of us had our campus bans lifted. The 2 that didn't are just like students who are still technically students of the university. They're just not currently enrolled in classes. So that's some bullshit that we're still fighting. But overall, huge win. And then finally, they are going to expand the Scholars in Exile program at the University of Minnesota to include Palestinian scholars who are displaced by the occupation. And so those are like on paper, like what we've got there, super huge. We're very proud of what we achieved, but obviously we know that this is nowhere near the end of this fight. We have not yet won divestment. We are working towards it, but we are not going to rest. As part of that, our relationships with other campus groups have strengthened greatly. Like, obviously, we were already organizing with SJP and some grad students and faculty members or whatever, but this really like brought them much closer to us, and we have a level of trust that we didn't have before, where we feel like we can really lean on each other in that organizing space. And also, like, we know that people are watching around the globe, including other communists who are taking some inspiration from what we're doing in the US as the student movement. Like, I did an interview during that first week with a representative from the newspaper for the Communist Party of Sweden, and that article came out there. And that, like, just what an incredible opportunity and a great way to like spread across like international lines, like, this is what's working and we're doing this for Palestine, and it's like we're gonna, like, I don't know, we have so much momentum. And yeah, we're ready to go into the fall. We've learned some lessons. Obviously, we spent a lot of time summating. We know how important summation is, both like with the public so that they know exactly what went down, but also within our organizations so that we can continue to fight in a way that works and that makes sense. And so a couple of things I jotted down. I promise I'm almost done. Are that we submitted that setting up during the day with high visibility and as many people there as possible might have been more effective in like working against the police forces that arrested us right away that day. But this is sort of a double-edged sword. You know, as people who believe in dialectical materialism, we know that 2 things can be true at once. And so we know that, like, it would have been nice to not have our organizing capacity that first day pretty much sliced in half, with 9 of us going to jail that entire day and then being banned from campus for a little bit. However, at the same time, like I mentioned earlier, we would not have had the momentum that we had going into the encampment if it hadn't been for those early on arrests that activated everybody. Then I think it's also important to keep in mind, I don't know, I'm just like thinking if other people are thinking about starting encampments or going into the fall, seeing this level of struggle continue to be raised, and needing to be prepared for that sort of thing. It's good to do some press training beforehand, or if you don't have time for that because you're planning this within like 36 hours, at least agree on some language that is friendly to use when you're talking to media. We know that bourgeois mainstream media is not our friend, and so we need to maintain control over the narrative by being ready to talk to media when they inevitably come to us and are like, what do you think of Hamas? It's like, okay, that's not what we're doing here. We're like, the focus is on divestment and what we're doing on campus to help free Palestine. And another great way to maintain control of the narrative is to, as your capacity allows you to, or ask a comrade to help you with it, write fight back articles, things like that. Or if you have some local media that you can post your own words to, that is very helpful. Always lean on greater campus and community support if you have it. We would not have been able to keep so many people fed, and we wouldn't have had access to so many supplies and everything if it weren't for all of the organizers around us. In Minneapolis, we have the Free Palestine Coalition, which is a coalition of organizations who are all united around Palestine, who have been doing like at least one action a week since October. It's like so incredible what we've been able to pull off there. But that was also a network of organizers who were willing to pretty much drop everything and help us with our encampment to be able to pull these victories off. We worked with grad students who had 24 access to buildings to let us in to use the bathroom when they shut down all of the buildings around our encampment, including the biggest library on campus during finals week, which was truly a choice. That library is usually open 24 hours, and they pissed everybody off by shutting that thing down because they were scared of us going in there to use the bathroom, I guess. Labor unions on campus were so helpful, especially AFSCME 3800, my union president talked to one of the regents and was the one who convinced her to convince the rest of whoever's in charge of that bullshit to drop the bans on 7 out of the 9 of us so that we could continue our campus lives of working and learning and living there. Something that was helpful with working with the community when you don't have maybe a lot of time to directly communicate with every single individual who has questions for you is to be posting on social media and making announcements on whatever sound system that you've got, to specify like the supplies that you need and action items that people can do regularly if they want to participate and help out in some way. And one of the most important points here is to never lose sight of the goal of liberation for Palestine. The encampments are not for fun, even though it is like pertinent to keep revolutionary spirits high. But we're not here to enjoy ourselves, you know, like we're here to really put in the work. We cannot give opportunists an inch to take over. We need to be super sharp on that and knowing the forces around us who might not have the interests of Palestine and divestment in mind the same way that we do. All parties that are involved in organizing with you should be unified with your demands, and like make sure to have some grace with yourself when you do make missteps, because you are going to do that. You do that in any sort of organizing, I'm sure, and anybody who's been on the ground here or ever organized a protest knows that it's not easy to do this shit, especially when you're running on like 2 hours of sleep for 2 weeks straight. It's really hard, and like you're allowed to make mistakes, and then the important thing is to learn from them and don't let it stop you. The very most important thing to take away from this movement is that we are so far from being finished here. We need to go into the fall like ready to punch administrations in the gut to work towards divestment. And that, like, I know campuses have sort of a lull in the summers and everything, but like at the University of Minnesota, we're using this as an opportunity to build up our work. We're having those meetings and everything. And we're remembering that there are buildings to occupy. There are Board of Regents members' houses to decorate. And as always, there are streets to march in and there are campuses to shut down. And we need to keep those tools at the ready to break out at pretty much a moment's notice. And we do that by consistently organizing even through the lulls of when people aren't around so much on summer, so that we can really be ready to punch up at administration as soon as people are back on campus and active. Okay, I know I just talked for kind of a long time, but I'm done.
All right. Thank you, Mira. And thank you, Minnesota, for the things that you gained, but bigger than that, all the lessons that you all learned. And you all were, I think, the first of the SDS chapters, at least, or one of the first to do the encampment. So I know a lot of people watched you to see what would happen next. So, thank you for that. All right. Next, we will go to Tulane Students for Democratic Society's Maya Sanchez, New Orleans.
Hi, I also want to thank you all for being here and for having me. Things are a lot different down here in the South than in other parts of the country. And I also am going to preface by saying I'm a little bit limited on what I can say because we're all under investigation with no updates, which is super cool. But I also want to say I was introduced as from Tulane University in New Orleans, but everything Tulane SDS has done would not have been possible without Loyola SDS. Loyola is our neighbor, quite literally. Our campuses are right next to each other. And we have an interesting kind of history as institutions. We've kind of not really been friends, but this movement has really brought us together. And yeah, I mean, there's 3 chapters of SDS in New Orleans, and we all love each other and we love working together and supported each other and everything. So on the point of Loyola and Tulane being right next to each other, we started, or the SDS chapters started planning encampments, having a conversation about which campus is this going to happen at? Are we going to do 2 different campuses at the same time? How do we want to go about this? And we ultimately decided to do a Tulane and Loyola SDS encampment on Tulane's property. There's a number of reasons for this, but I think definitely out of Loyola and Tulane is the bigger target. Tulane, I would say, is probably one of the largest unaffiliated Zionist universities in the country. They will not say that they're attached to anything, but they very clearly are. Our school has a 43% Jewish population, which is not to conflate Zionism with Judaism, but what it does mean is that Hillel has a massive stake in our institution. They have brought active IOF soldiers onto our campus who are literally straight from Gaza, all of which is approved by our university. They host or scheduled an Israel Day during Tulane's anti-Semitism awareness week, and we're very, very mad when some of us had that rescheduled. But that's just kind of a little bit of information about Tulane. So I also will say we didn't think that we would last a night. We didn't think we'd last an hour. But kind of what Mira was saying is that so many people were activated by what we were doing, the stance we were taking, and that became even more true after the encampment ended. There was never a moment at our encampment where cops were not present, not a single moment. There were always at least 10. And admin did not even try to negotiate with people in the encampment. Multiple people tried to start conversations. They said, no, if you want to have a conversation, you have to shut it down. That wasn't going to happen. Eventually, I mean, it was a really high stress situation. It was really high stress. And I say that because I visited the Wayne State encampment a couple weeks ago. And that was chill. I was like, wow, I'm learning so much. This is so cool. Like, and when I was at the Tulane encampment, there was genuinely not a moment where I was able to relax. But it was also really awesome. And we learned a lot. I think that the way our university responded is especially particular to Tulane. Our university's president, Michael Fitz, made a personal phone call to the governor of Louisiana to shut down the encampment. So after, I believe, 33 hours, the governor sent between 100 and 200 state police in riot gear onto our campus. And there were three, I guess, units of the police there. There was the Tulane University Police, New Orleans Police, and then Louisiana State Police. Along with 200 cops in riot gear, there were tanks. There were people in these tanks. Actually, I'm sorry. It was not a tank. It was a Bearcat, which is an armored vehicle. And I have to make sure that's clear because the police is currently trying to say that we're lying about there being tanks when actually we just don't know the specific name of armored vehicles. So there were Bobcats there. There were snipers in these armored vehicles. They were aiming guns at students' heads. These are largely Black and brown students. And how it ended up ending is a group of 12 students sitting locking arms on the university sidewalk, basically sitting ducks waiting to be arrested. And so after that, so they arrested 12 people. And then they also arrested 2 bystanders that were just there. One of these kids literally was like doing an art project and heard noise and went outside to see what was going on. And the cops arrested him. It's horrific. So after that, our institution erected a 8-foot tall apartheid wall of their own on the lawn where we had staged our encampment. They took our tents that we used, and they didn't even bother moving them to a different location. They stayed in the exact same space. And for 3 weeks, if not more, our institution was paying pigs overtime to sit on a lawn and drink beer and hang out. On top of their little apartheid wall, they also erected a police surveillance tower in the middle of our campus, which was probably like 20 feet tall. And these cost a minimum of $80,000 each. So Tulane has their priorities set. And on top of all that, I'm gonna, go a little bit off for a second. So since October, there have been 28, I believe, I might be off by one. There have been 28 total arrests in the movement in New Orleans. 27 of these arrests have happened on Tulane's campus. So we as Tulane students are quite literally in the belly of the beast. And on top of everything we went through with cops during the encampment, there was also a mob of Zionists the entire time. Not a minute without that either, which is something we've been experiencing kind of all year, is racism, harassment, just like actually horrible things from the Zionists, and our institution does nothing about it because they don't care. Since our conduct charges have been given, sorry, I'm really jumping around right now. Since our conduct charges have been given, administrators have admitted to overcharging students, claiming that it's their policy for student conduct investigations to overcharge. They also admitted that the encampment was not dangerous, even though they've sent emails upon emails to the public about how dangerous and unlawful our occupation of the front lawn was. So what they're doing now is digging themselves into a hole. We've also heard that the district attorney and other people in power at Tulane University are looking to expel students. But ultimately, we know that we're on the right side of history. The people who were arrested the last time they went to court, which was a couple weeks ago, their arraignment was rescheduled to July 30th, which is the last day that the DA can accept the charges, which again just shows that we're winning. They wouldn't push it that far if they had something to charge these people with, but they don't. I also want to talk a bit more about Tulane as an institution in New Orleans. So New Orleans is a majority Black city, and Tulane is a predominantly white institution that really has a chokehold over the city. They're the largest employer. They receive tax breaks from the state. They're not liked. I learned very quickly coming into Tulane within months probably that I don't want to be in the streets of New Orleans saying I'm a Tulane student. It's not something to be proud of when you know the harm that your institution has caused to the locals. And so another interesting thing that has kind of developed from their reactions is that Tulane has proved that not only do they not care about the city of New Orleans, but they also don't care about their own students. And it just further drives the point that their only motivator is money and is donors. And we know that the reason they want to expel people is because they have donors pushing them, saying, we're going to stop funding, we're going to stop giving you guys money if you don't do something about these protesters. But we're all smarter than them, and we all know this, and we've all caught on. So, I mean, I think it's tough going to a school in the South, going to a school that's against you. I mean, all of us, I think all of our universities are probably against us. But what the encampment did was it taught New Orleans SDS a lot. It brought us a lot closer together. People who have been in the SDS chat for months and maybe only taken on a task or two are now doing everything, which is not awesome. I was exaggerating. They're not doing everything. They're taking up big roles, and everyone is really activated in supporting us. Sorry, the last thing I want to say is that one of our students who was arrested was kicked in the head by a horse. That it was like a mounted police, and their horse kicked our student in the head, and then they arrested her. And she was diagnosed with a concussion. And you're right. Whoever sent that in the chat is a great way to kill someone. So we're currently going after New Orleans Police Department because that is a complete violation. And yeah. Yeah, I think that is enough. But yeah, it's hard, but we love each other, and we love National SDS and the support we get from the city, from the community, and from nationals and other chapters. So dare to struggle, dare to win, I guess.
Dare to struggle, dare to win. You said it, Maya. And as someone who is also in the South and whose school also used tear gas on the protesters here, a special kind of solidarity, I guess. But thank you so much. And we will go next to Audari Tamayo at University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee Students for a Democratic Society. Take it away.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Like everybody else, it's a pleasure and an honor to be here and speak to some of our experiences here in Milwaukee. I'll start off by explaining a little bit of how our encampment came to be. It came to be as a student-led coalition of five organizations. It was the Muslim Student Association, the Students for Justice in Palestine, Young Democratic Socialists of America, UNPAC, and of course the Students for Democratic Society. We definitely had an encampment that was a force to be reckoned with. We stood up for 16 weeks or 16 days, sorry, after threats of trying to shut us down pretty much every day came from the university. Um, us five organizations had worked together in the past, and the majority of us are a part of the statewide Coalition for Justice in Palestine. But we had never really been like a official unified front. We were fairly disunited in our demands, our tactics, and overall strategy. But it became apparent that we had to be united on the simple things, and five student organizations are much stronger than one. And like I said, this unity in tactics and strategy and demands, it made it easy for the administration to try to divide us. Um, we had a general campaign being ran by SDS since the fall. We had an action nearly every week, and it really peaked in February after we led occupation of the school's administrative building. This resulted in five SDS members being arrested. I myself was thrown face first on the ground after being zip tied. Um, but we after that we began fighting civil charges as well as conduct charges on campus. For months, the administration tried to use this as justification to try to isolate SDS and put all the student organizations fighting for a free Palestine against each other. Try to play on our our differences in tactics. Say like, oh, these guys are too radical. You shouldn't work with them. They're too unreasonable. Um, and it didn't work. We quickly realized, after speaking with each other, we realized, that this is just, COINTELPRO 2.0. I know that shit never ended. And we made it clear to the administration that, they're not dealing with us as individuals or as individual organizations anymore. They're dealing with the united front of organizations fighting for the same cause. And while many students and organizations part of this coalition were relatively new to political activism, like the MSA, they're largely a cultural organization. Um, we it was a massive transformation of all these organizations. We well, the coalition as a whole became more open to militant and direct approaches. We really saw what it meant for decades to happen in weeks. This movement that we had been building for a long time, that saw escalations across the country for months, in building occupations, disruptions of, Board of Regents meetings and things like that. And it really hit ahead once the encampment started and students began taking over large swaths of campus and taking over entire buildings, that became the dominant tactic. So once we came together as a coalition, our primary goal was to plan for an encampment. Some way or another, the university caught wind of this, and they sent a last ditch email certain student organizers trying to just scare them away, saying that camping on campus is illegal. You're gonna uh let's meet and we can like do all the things that we said we couldn't do the past 6-7 months. And these students and these organizations said hell no, it's too late for that. It's too late to you're not going to talk to us as individuals anymore. You got to talk to everybody in the coalition or you talk to nobody. And that was a massive change to a couple months ago when we were all trying to deal with administration on as our individual organizations. But our encampment it not only just raise the level of struggle, the level of consciousness, throughout our campus. We were able to land a blow against the enemy, a blow against the administration, a blow against the statewide board of regents, the statewide or, the local Zionist forces, and ultimately, we tied our struggle to a, wider anti-imperialist struggle in our own right. We launched with this pretty strict and firm anti-imperialist platform, highlighting the reality of U.S. involvement in the genocide, the origins of its, securing markets and establishing a military outpost. And our demands, they reflected that they were to, disclose and divest like, most people, but also to cut all ties, period. Any and all companies doing, normalizing relations. We wanted no part in that. And day one, our plan of attack was to announce a rally to get large group of people out on campus at the same time. And there was like undercover cops throughout campus, just kind of like keeping tally of how many people were there. But we quickly outnumbered them. So we marched around campus to our encampment site. We set up right away. We started out with enough tents for like 95 people. So we had a pretty large encampment to start with. Took over a pretty big piece of a lawn on campus. That first day, that was probably the day with the highest tension. There was the University of Wisconsin-Madison, which is the largest state school in Wisconsin, has 55,000 students. Pretty huge school. They also started an encampment basically the same time we did, so the state was on high alert. The governor sent out like they declared a no encampment zone, and that schools had to do everything in their power to shut down these encampments. So that we saw the effects of that, governor's order, and the police were rallying across the street from us. They were amassing, a couple dozen of them, departments from across Milwaukee County. But we put up the barricades right away. And we made shields. We rallied people to come to the encampment, and quickly the city police actually refused to raid us, even though that the campus police was practically begging them to do something to us. But the campus police did not have the manpower, and quite frankly, neither did all the different departments across the county. So after that first day, we didn't really sleep much that first night. We went to sleep with our shoes on, went to sleep with our helmets and our goggles right next to us, with our 5-gallon water jug right outside of our tent, ready to go if we had to. And that it wasn't for no reason. It wasn't just to we were playing anything up. We saw what happened across the country, the police and the reactionary instigated violence. But we also saw the brave student defenses like at Humboldt. So we were prepared for anything. We were prepared to stand up and fight back if we had to. So after that first day, that first night, we didn't really have a police presence at any point that gave us that we felt like we were gonna get raided. It was pretty relaxed. Nobody faced any arrests. There was police parked nearby the encampment, but never enough for it to really, worry us. So we established ourselves very well. We were able to carry out our political program for the 16 days that we were there. We had various committees that were running 24/7. We had a security committee, medic committee, logistics committee that took care of organizing food drop-offs and the overall day-to-day program, and a supplies committee that was running to and from where most of our stuff was stored, and replenishing things at camp. So we had everything we needed to be there for as long as we had to. Um, so we ran teach-ins and various trainings throughout the 2 weeks we were there. And like, not only were we very militant in our approach and with the barricades, but raising the level of militancy among the student body, taking inspiration from the revolutionary Palestinian people. But we also, made a conscious effort in engaging in a community-wide movement to, raise the level of consciousness. When at a point not too long ago, only like 6 or 7 staff felt like they could sign a pro-Palestine petition. Once the encampment launched, over 120 faculty and staff signed a letter in solidarity with the encampment. Similarly, the largest labor organization in the Milwaukee area, the Milwaukee Area Labor Council, signed a resolution in support of the encampment and its demands. And on campus itself, we saw students that had never even been to a rally, that had never even picked up a sign before, taking up integral roles at the encampment, doing overnight security shifts, doing medic training, and doing whatever they could to be involved. So it was really beautiful to see. We saw that these advanced actions, when the conditions are right, they will advance large swaths of people. We saw the United Front in action with the various movements and the various tendencies united in action. We saw the mass line in action, and we were conscious to always be the headlights and not the taillights in the various movements that we were involved in. So aside from our day-to-day programming, there was also a couple high-profile events that took place during the encampment. May Day was the first week of our encampment, so there was a large car caravan that came from the citywide May Day march that came to our encampment. The following day, we participated in a high school student walkout, in which they walked out of campus and then they marched to our encampment. Drawing back to the East LA blowouts. A lot of these high school students were saying, once I get to UWM, or once I get to college, I'm going to join SDS, or I'm going to start a chapter if there isn't one where I go to school. It was a pretty cool to see that the student movement is like getting to a point where it's self-sustaining. So after that first week, those high energy actions, was pretty much a week-long rally. We wake up, we're already chanting, we go to sleep chanting. It was a lot. But we finally got the administration to meet with us after that, after being at the encampment for 1 week. They gave us a bunch of nothing. But then after saying that they couldn't meet with us for another 3 months, it's like, oh, like, take down your encampment and we'll meet with you in like August. We laughed it off, and we made them meet with us, and 2 days later, and then we met it again 2 days after that. We through this process, we were talking with students that didn't understand the point of having something such as the encampment as a vital tool in the overall strategy. Just like a union uses the strike as a tactic. That the encampment was our strike, so to speak. But ultimately, after 16 days, we shut down our encampment. We didn't achieve full disclosure, but we did get our chancellor to use his political power and his position as treasurer in this local organization called the Water Council to cut ties with 2 Israeli water companies that have been directly implicated in shutting off water for the people of Gaza. We got the school to resolutely condemn the genocidal actions of Israel. They mentioned the word scholasticide. And we got, other major rhetorical wins. We forced them to not address the 1,200 Israeli casualties as innocent, because as we all know, there was various members of the military and the police involved that were casualties. Things like that. It seemed like nothing at the time, but it's part and parcel to changing the overall narrative in the movement. So we didn't take that lightly. And then we also forced the school to begin a formal investigation into their study abroad programs to Israel. Um, you know, uh, we're we're still fighting to have a wider representation from students and friendly faculty on this like investigative committee. But and any reasonable conclusion will end with these study abroad programs ending. Um, and thankfully, there hasn't been a study abroad program to occupied Palestine for many years, anyways. But we're still fighting to make sure that there's never any again. Um, and then we also forced them to set up a meeting with the UWM Foundation, which controls all the investments. After they had said that they could never do that. So we got a lot of nevers that a lot of things that they said that we'd never get it, we got them. As a result of the encampment. And then obviously, not everybody was happy with the end of the encampment. I think a lot of it was due to a lapse in communication. A lot of decisions, were on the spot or they happened overnight. We had a meeting that went from like 8 p.m. to almost 4 a.m. Um, I don't recommend doing that. The administration definitely achieved their goal in, keeping us up all night, arguing about, minutia and trying to sow the disunity, but they didn't succeed, and ultimately it was up to how we engaged in summation, and how we summarized the overall gains and lessons from the encampment, and ultimately we did win that battle for summation, and we didn't see ending the encampment as a defeat. We're simply changing our tactics. The encampment ended largely on our terms. We took it down as opposed to the encampment fizzling out or being prematurely raided by the pigs. And I think that's something positive to look to. And to back up our summation, one day after the encampment ended, it was Nakba Day, and this student-led coalition led a 300 to 400 person march to the doorsteps of the foundation. So definitely, the movement was still alive. Just because, like many thought that just because the encampment ended, it meant everything that we had was out the window. But we showed that it is not the case. Um, we, as communists, like Mira said, we took our revolutionary task to heart. Those cadre that took part in the encampment. We asked ourselves if we won everything that we could win, and we said yes. We got everything out of the school that we could have got. But even though we didn't get disclosure or divestment, we now know that we can only get that from the foundation, and that's what we're focusing all our energies from. Definitely dealt a blow to the enemy, both on campus. None of us got any charges. We got full amnesty. We threw their hypocrisy at their face, calling our encampment illegal for 2 weeks, and then nothing came out of it. And we got major rhetorical wins, and then some other major advancements in cutting ties to Israel. And we definitely raised the level of consciousness, not just on our campus but throughout the city. And then we did win many of the advanced over to the revolutionary movement. To sum it all up, as we know, the RNC is coming to Milwaukee in just about a month. They'll be here July 15th. And our work in the coalition to march on the RNC has definitely heightened since the encampment. Every new member of SDS is also a part of the various committees of the coalition. We just a week ago today, an SDS contingent led interruption of the business and finance meeting for the Board of Regents. During a presentation on like moving forward together or whatever they called it. And so we, went in there tried to read a statement, and after some comrades were arrested and cited for that, dragged out of the room, and let go. We went to the press conference for the Coalition to March on RNC to announce that we're suing the city for the permits that we've been asking for nearly 2 years. So the student movement, the youth in the city has definitely reinvigorated all aspects of the people's movements. Um, and I'm sure not just in Milwaukee, but throughout the country. It's definitely being reflected in the level of struggle that we haven't seen in a long time, and it'll definitely be reflected when we all march on the racist and reactionary Republicans in July, and Genocide Joe and his crew in August, and to leave y'all off with at least attempt to leave y'all off with something positive. Something we brought up throughout the encampment was a quote by Huey Newton. He said, the revolution has always been in the hands of the young, and that the young will always inherit the revolution. So for all the young people on the call, or not so young, it doesn't matter. We got to remember we got to take back our futures. And we can only do that by organizing and committing ourselves to revolutionary movements. So, don't see any action you take as isolated from the overall goal of, changing society.
Yeah, absolutely. And a couple of things are incredible work that y'all have done. I saw the University of Wisconsin president condemning y'all's university president on social media. So you got the tigers fighting, right? The same way that the police were fighting, isolating and weakening them. They can't get their shit together if they're confused over what even happened and who to blame. And if folks didn't catch that, people on this call should be thinking about marching on the RNC. And there's mentioned earlier, there's going to be an online planning report, basically June 24th on a Monday, to speak with the Coalition to March on the RNC and learn how we can do that. The same as we're going to march on the DNC too. So, as mentioned earlier, but yeah, incredible work. And we will go next to our final program speaker of the night, and then we'll take questions. We'll hear from Denver Students for Democratic Society's Khalid, Ahmad, Hamu. Go ahead, Khalid.
Hi, everyone. I want to also thank the folks on this call for making it out. I know it's been an hour and 20 minutes. But yeah, thank y'all so much. The Denver Students for a Democratic Society has had a divestment campaign going on since November. We actually switched to that from another campaign that we had going on because we were able to move so many more students. It went from tens of people to hundreds of people at our protest. So we're like we have to do this, along with the Palestinian people needing the support from us. Denver Students for a Democratic Society is the only student-led political org on our campus. So we're the only ones who set up the encampment. It wasn't like a coalition or anything like that. We did have some support from the local Colorado Palestine Coalition that we've been organizing with since October 7th. Our campus is in the middle of downtown Denver, has a really high working class background, and there's 3 schools on our campus. It's a tri-institutional campus. It is the University of Colorado, Denver. It is the Metropolitan State University and the Community College of Denver. We started off with only demands at the University of Colorado, but we then added on demands to the Metropolitan State University as well. We put up the way the week went is that we started messaging each other about wanting to do an encampment on Monday. We had an online meeting on Tuesday. Wednesday night, we prepared banners and tents. And then Thursday, April 25th, we set up our encampment. And there were only 8 people on this call, and we were able to last 22 days. On the second day, we had 60 riot police pull up on us, and we didn't have that many people with us. So we did a semicircle around the camp, locked arms. There were only about 20 of us. 2 hours later, a total of 45 people were arrested. People who had just come to support were getting arrested. It was insane. It was insane brawls going on nationwide. People had seen the Denver Police Department violently attack peaceful student protesters who were only fighting to see an end to ties to genocide. After the police left, we had set right back up. We had now over 100 people versus the 20 people in the morning. We got on the mic. We submitted this as a victory. The police wanted to destroy camp, and we still had the tents, and we had more people to set right back up. Even when they came back later that day, we were steadfast in keeping camp up and our demands. And with more people this time, we surrounded camp, locked arms again, and the police left an hour and 30 minutes later with no arrest that night. We were able to last so long because this issue had popular support. On our campus, our SDS meetings doubled in size immediately with students who were militant and ready to fight. The popular support also extended to the city of Denver and people all across the state. They're willing to support in any way they can. They were giving us tents, they were giving us clothes, they were giving us food. They were like, we need to put ourselves on the line so we can protect the students. This really is a popular struggle. Our campus has been supporting the occupation for some time and their apartheid system. They actually moved the Golda Meir house onto our campus and then made it a Denver landmark. Golda Meir is one of the prime ministers of Israel and one of the most insane racists. If you should look into it. So we had her on our campus, or at least her house. And with our campus continuing support. With our campus continuing to support Israel, even with their genocide, we knew that we had to fight. These were unacceptable conditions. We understood that historically students have had to demand for progressive change on our campuses, like the longest student strike for the first College of Ethnic Studies, or the fight to cut ties with South Africa apartheid. Our admin, like the people before them, were standing on the side of oppressors, and that means that we must organize to see change. It's our funds that are being sent to the occupation. We went from rallying and marching on campus and getting no response to full financial disclosure from the Metropolitan State University. They had told us that, our endowment is only $15 million, and Israel's just a small part of that. It turns out $18 million were in corporations operating inside of the occupation, as well as a program that had over 50 students funneled into Lockheed Martin and a program to keep that going. Literally insane. And then we had our campus administration asking to meet with us. When can we meet? Let's keep in touch with these people. Still jerking us around, but a definite change from what we saw before. We have raised the level of struggle to heights unseen in decades. We're at a higher level of struggle than we saw even with the SDS back in the 60s with the Vietnam War. We now have an org that is bigger and more militant. We saw the depths that our admin were willing to go to defend the investments, to defend empire. They're willing to sick riot police on their own students, lie, deceit. They would talk about a reality that is separate from our own. They would say, oh, we love the protests, but, we're not cool with the camps. And it's like, you don't understand. The camps are the protest, we understand that we must take the needs of the students, demand and fight to see change and escalate until we see them. Currently we're fighting both legal and academic consequences from the police in our schools, but we're continuing to fight. We're marching on the houses of the Board of Regents that continues to ignore us. No business as usual under a genocide. The Denver Police Department had so thoroughly shown themselves to be such a backwards, reactionary, violent force in our city that they put out a statement saying, oh, we actually had no legal right to go arrest these students, and any arrest that followed that was only a citation and a court date. We were taking streets for hours with police only diverting traffic and giving us no dispersal order. We took Colfax, the longest continuous street in the country, as well as other essential streets downtown with no dispersal orders, simply them just waiting us out. And then we realized that 22 days into the encampment, the rhetoric from admin was about our actions and not the camp itself. And with it being summer, and we realized that the tool of camp had waned in its effectiveness. And now we are continuing to put pressure on our campus administration, off our campus, and keep our militancy high.
Woo! Hell yeah, Denver. That's incredible. 22 days. And then for folks to know, I'm remiss in not mentioning this, SDS's national convention this year is going to be at Denver. It's not Denver University. It is it's 3 schools in one campus. It's going to be in the Auraria campus, which also has MSU, and it's going to be in Denver, October 14th, weekend of October 14th, 15th. So please come out. But yeah, no, that was incredible. Thank you so much to our speakers for your incredible presentations. And now let's go. And thank you to everyone here who stayed on this call as well. There's a lot going on in this movement and a lot of detail, and hopefully it was interesting the whole time. Do people have questions? If you have questions, please raise your hand. Use the raise hand function. Or turn your camera on and raise your hand so we can call on you. All right. I see a couple so far. All right, we'll be watching. Yeah, let's go. Raise hand button is if you hit more, if you're on a computer, hit more and then reactions. Then you'll see a raise hand function. So if it's not directly at the bottom. Okay, let's go. All right. Andrew Ellingson, we'll ask you to unmute. Go ahead. And if you want to direct it at a speaker, you can, on multiple, panelists can answer as well. Yeah, go ahead, Andrew Ellingson.
Hi, I just wanted to say congrats on the great work, especially the U of M SDS, but I'm currently in the process of setting up an SDS at my school, which is MCAD. Do you know what would be what would be the best way to plan out like an encampment or a walkout?
Oh shit. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead.
No, finish your question. Okay, I have to ask you to unmute again. Yeah, go ahead.
Or I forgot what I was about to say, but what are the best ways to get people to show up and ask who ask for donations or whatever.
Great question. All right, who of our panelists wants to try to answer this one? How do you form an SDS and how do you get an encampment or similar movement going? Yeah, go ahead, Audari.
I think there's a lot of ways, but you got to start with talking with people, seeing where people are at. If you're still in the midst of building a chapter, I think just being bold and tabling, flyering wherever you can. We call it guerrilla tabling when you're not technically allowed to table, but you do it anyways. Getting the word out of it for SDS any way possible, and once you establish a chapter, I think something like a walkout becomes that much easier. What we did for the walkout back in October is announce it everywhere that we could, flyer everywhere that we could, on the verge of being annoying with it. Announcing it in the middle of class that don't show up to class tomorrow, things like that. It's things like that. It's can be embarrassing at first or whatever, but gotta get over it if we want to actually affect change.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'll go Rick, and then we'll go Khalid.
I just wanted to add to that. I think everything that was said before is spot on, but I would also say, don't feel ashamed or worried if the first couple meetings you call, you only get 2 people, 3 people. Remember that even with 2 people, you can start going and you can start a chapter. And to that end, our chapter was pretty small at the start. I was operating with 3 other people for a lot of our first semester. And what we did was we reached out to other orgs on campus that were doing similar work. We reached out to trade unions and showed support with them. There's faculty unions, staff unions. And by doing that, we were able to host a rally with everybody, and that rally got us more support and brought more people in. And we couldn't have orchestrated that rally without the unions and the other orgs. So you can building coalition helps a lot. And again, just talking to other students, seeing where they're at, staying consistent with your materials, put flyers around campus, keep tabling, keep talking to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the basics. Yeah. Okay, Khalid.
Yeah, I agree with what the previous people said. A lot of people during our encampment was like, I remember seeing you guys like always table with like a smile and a Palestinian flag behind you. Like understanding that like we really want to like fight to see like change. And I would say like make sure you're the headlights. That like make sure that like you're always like moving the student body to take that next step. Like we can fight for Palestine and we can make change. Join us in this fight. And then also just like by being part of the popular fight, you're gonna have people like attracted to you. You're gonna have people who like want to join you. So you just have to like be good at organizing and pick a fight that's like really central to like the student body wants and stuff like that. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you to our speakers. And then next, because we have a plethora of hands, let's go to Simon.
Hi there. I wanted to congratulate everybody on their encampments. Sounds really amazing. I had a question, and it's like an FRSO call. My question would be if the comrades could report how their work has built the revolutionary movement, how it fits into our strategy for revolution in the U.S. More generally, and what is the role of the Freedom Road Socialist Organization in the encampment movement. This could be to any comrade. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Simon, for so for folks who are in the FRSO, for comrades, what did this have to do with revolution? Oh, yeah, we got a hand from Mira.
Oh, thank you for giving me permission to unmute. Yeah, to address part of that question with like how the work that we do on campus has to do with our strategy for revolution. Obviously, work for the liberation for Palestine is work that we do to liberate oppressed nationalities. Obviously, this isn't one of the ones that resides specifically within the US and its origins, but it is still incredibly important, and we recognize that the movement to free Palestine is really the movement to free all people in the world, especially other oppressed nationalities. To speak on how FRSO has been involved specifically in the encampments, it's that the nature of FRSO cadre is that we are completely boots on the ground in the mass work that we do. We take on leadership roles within SDS and things like that on campus. We're the ones who have we build up our organizing experience to be able to pass down to other newer activists, whether they're comrades or not. We want to work with that, whether the united front that we can build on campus to strengthen the strategic alliance between working class and oppressed nationality people. And so we need to be taking up that work ourselves to be setting an example for everybody else around us. And just like Audari and Khalid have said so far, great quote from Frank Chapman: we need to be the headlights, not the taillights. We need to be leading the masses in the correct direction that they want to go and the way that we know to get there, not lagging behind them. And so that's why we need to be the ones doing that work.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't lead from an ivory tower. We lead from the front lines, whatever that means, right? Yeah. Audari, let's unmute you.
Yeah, wholeheartedly agree with what Mira just said. One thing I would add is like in our encampment, it was very clear, that we were doing our not just us as a student cadre, but also our comrades across the city. They were, leaders in pushing for, like the Milwaukee Area Labor Council to pass this resolution. When at a time it was difficult to get them to sign on to, for example, the Coalition to March on RNC or DNC. So it wasn't no small thing. And the aspect of the strategic alliance was emphasized by the comrades across the district. So it was definitely a student-led effort, but couldn't have been done without the extensive efforts from comrades across the city and across the state. Um, and to bounce off of that a little bit, we saw what some our encampment had comrades taking leading roles in virtually every aspect of, and we don't just declare ourselves leaders, we become such, because the people in the mass group see us in that way, and also because we don't shy away from the work. We're boots on the ground. We're not, self-declared leaders or anything like that. So it was it definitely gave us glimpses of what that last part in our revolutionary strategy for revolution, the united front against monopoly capitalism, with the strategic alliance of the multinational working class and the oppressed nationality movements under the leadership of the working class and its party. Ultimately our goal is to party build, and not just build the party, but be a leading force in these movements. And I think the encampment here in Milwaukee definitely gave us glimpses of what that could look like when things are under the leadership of a militant, working class, and a group that are being the taillights and pushing forward change.
Yeah, absolutely. Great answers. Thank you so much, comrades. And we'll go next to Faza, asking you to unmute.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, sorry, I came in late, so I'm sorry if this is a stupid question. It's like more of a general question, but does anybody happen to know if there's like any pro-Palestinian movements around UNF or North Florida?
I can answer this because I'm in Florida.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Okay.
There's a bunch of student groups and an SDS that had an encampment. It ended with folks getting arrested, but the community and the students have been rallying since. I think they're working on dropping the charges. But yeah, you just reach out to UNF SDS. Yeah.
Could you give me like a context? Or I'm like really new and everything.
Yeah. They had an encampment. And they were threatened to leave like every day. And the police, the tactic across Florida was leave at 5, leave at 5. And for a little while, people did. And then all of the Florida chapters at some point got to the point where they said, we're not getting up. And then you had a variety of different things happen. But, that included a lot of arrests. So, yeah, UNF SDS.
Yeah, I saw it on the news, and I was I felt a little kind of like defeated about it, because I was like, oh, compared to other places, like kind of the movement's kind of small here because, it's like Florida. But I mean, I'm glad there's like, people in Florida from here. So
yeah. I'll tell you, it's the community is very invigorated, despite the things that happen to us. Yeah.
Is it the link that? Hold on, I think it's.
Yeah, I'll send it directly to you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great question. All right. Thank you, Faza. And thank you, Maya. Thanks so much for your amazing presentation. Good luck building your table, and I'm sure we'll see you soon.
Thank you for having me.
New Orleans. Okay. All right. And then to the committee, fan club of Maya Sanchez, please accept my application. But all right, we'll go next to Egan Dunn.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Perfect. So my question is mostly at Mira, but then obviously open to anyone. But when you're talking about kind of the initial plans and how without that initial kind of escalation from the police, you might have had that kind of energy fade out over the 2 weeks. And now that I think the university has probably seen that they can kind of not diffuse, but not have the police escalate as hard as they have in other cities and universities. Do you have any kind of thoughts on how you'll be able to take that kind of lack of escalation and keep the momentum going now? Like, have you learned anything from that? I hope that question made sense.
Yes, that is a fantastic question, and that's one we've gotten quite a few times. And the answer really is, like, if the university is becoming unresponsive and they're not escalating things themselves, it's on us to escalate. And so we need to be taking even more militant actions even than the encampment. If they decide, well, we're not gonna mess with that anymore, we're not gonna acknowledge that anymore. It's like part of the normal school year, graduation isn't coming up, so we don't care as much as we did at that time. Plus, with the new president, we don't really know how her tactics are gonna be. But Humboldt SDS really gave us a fantastic example with that 8-day occupation of like an important building on campus. That is something we've kept on the back burner of our minds as a possibility, because that would really, really piss them off. And I'm sure we can think of other things as well. But yeah, the answer is that we will be the ones to escalate then. And we are willing to put ourselves on the line.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Great question. Do any other speakers want to add anything to that? All right. We can go and keep moving along with the questions. We'll go next to Nathan Moore.
Hello. Okay. My question goes out to anyone who can answer. I live in a fairly small city. I'm from Shreveport. I was at the Tulane encampment and I joined FRSO at that moment. Since then I've been looking to build a unit or a district in Shreveport. What's the best way to go about doing that and recruiting people to the movement?
Ooh, so we have a website and we have a join thing. Andy, do you want to throw the link to the person? And then do any speakers want to speak to if a person wanted to build FRSO in their small town and they were the first? How does one go about it?
Okay, well, I'm getting a lot of things in the comments. So, well, thank you guys.
Yeah, so go on the website, sign up there. You may talk to Tom Burke, you might talk to other people. But yeah, we will help you. We'll make it happen.
Okay, I've already started printing flyers and hanging them out and going around to like establishments and talking to people. I've been having my friends talk to their friends. It's getting out there. I've had a few people message me, but I haven't had anybody actually join yet. So that's what I'm aiming to do, is to get people to join. Thank you guys for the resources.
Thank you. Get a group together and we'll make it happen. Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, I would just say, this isn't particular to the student movement, but just anywhere where Freedom Road is active. We might start with a small group of people and studying our program together, or looking for other leftists. But really, the bread and butter of what we do is we build mass struggle. We find out what the people in the community are need and want, and then we fight for that. And whether that means joining an existing organization or getting some folks together around a certain thing, I think that's I think it's great to build Freedom Road. I love building Freedom Road, but the kind of roots of that are the mass struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are the people who will get radicalized the most by everything that's happening and who will, quickly want the program that you'll give them. Um, all right. So let's go next to Eric Hudson.
Hi. Before I ask my question, I really want to salute the Tulane students. The oppression, violent oppression that you experienced was shocking and appalling. And you folks came out with such a forward thrust, and it was really exciting to see you push back, and the national coverage that they gave to the Zionists from Tulane was absolute. It's including the woman who went and testified at Congress when it was the Palestinians that were assaulted by Tulane students who attacked their vehicle, breaking the law, and they shifted the blame to you folks. So I really have so much, as a newcomer to the city, I have so much respect for you folks. My question is to the other chapters out doing amazing work. What has been the response from Black organizations on campus? I studied the Free South Africa movement, and I was taken aback by just how powerful the Palestinians were during that. So I'm just curious to see what specifically the Black student associations, the urban leagues, the NAACPs on campus, the fraternities and sororities, what has been the response for the Black folk at your schools?
Yeah, that's a great question. And then we'll open it up to if there are others who were on this call who helped organize encampments who can also chime in on this question as well. Feel free to raise your hand and answer it too, because it's just that good a question. But yeah, what do our speakers or other encampment leaders have to say about this? Okay, we'll go Rick and then Audari.
So at our encampment, I would say, especially at the start, like with the emergency meeting, most of the people who were really concerned and ready to take action were people of color. A lot of them were Black people, and continue to be a lot of people of color supporting the movement throughout. Our campus is a little strange. We're in kind of a remote area, and we don't have a whole lot of organizations on campus in general, and that includes Black organizations. Unfortunately, we have like CRGS is like critical race and gender studies, and a lot of people of color end up grouping together in that group on campus, and they supported us heavily throughout the entire thing. We have some cultural centers; many of them voiced support for us as well. And during teach-ins, we had a lot of faculty of color who came. So I would say without the Black presence on campus, without the people of color on campus, I don't think it would have gotten to the point that it did. I think they were really a driving force for the occupation on our campus to begin with. But unfortunately, we just don't have that many of those specific organizations here.
All right, thank you, Rick. Audari?
Yeah, our overall experience with the Black student population and the overall Black population of Milwaukee. Milwaukee is a majority Black city, 40% Black, but the campus doesn't reflect that. But we did try to work with the various Black student organizations on campus. But what we saw happen was the more activist minded students in these organizations came to SDS. I think ideally all these different student organizations would be activated and work as an organization, but we're also seeing that the students in these organizations are coming to SDS, for example, with more action oriented scope, but that's still to be developed. I think we have working relationships now with the with the Black Student Outreach Center on campus. But as student organizations, what we definitely experienced was the advanced students in these organizations coming to SDS instead.
Gotcha. Thank you for your thoughtful answer, Audari. And then I know that Marcus from UCF is on this call because I can see you. Are you still there, Marcus? I know that there's a big coalition for Palestine on your campus, and I think I heard the NAACP is in it, right? Orlando?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, so with our divestment coalition, it's organized a little bit differently. The different student organizations, so such as like SDS, YDSA, and some others that I'm forgetting off the top of my head, we're not officially putting our names on it at the moment for various reasons. Because it was we launched the encampment pretty early into our divestment campaign, and it was definitely an interesting experience. There's police response. Apologies, I'm a little out of breath right now. Yeah, yeah, I don't know if there's anything else I can answer. I apologize. I wasn't expecting to speak tonight.
No, totally. That's on me. Because I know that UCF NAACP was one of the groups mentioned as part of the encampment. So I wanted to just kind of like throw that as an example. And who better to talk about it than someone who's there, right? But yeah. All right. Is there anything more on that question? And I know we've been running up against time, so I appreciate everyone hanging in there. We will take our last two questions, but thank you, Eric, for that last one. We'll go next to Chris. Oh, I think we have three questions actually. Yeah, go ahead.
There we go. Okay. I'll make this quick because we're running against time here. With the semester ended and there being this kind of lull between university activities, how should we change up our tactics now that necessarily being on campus is not going to be a very effective strategy?
So what are we doing this summer, y'all? What are students doing this summer? Yeah, Rick. Okay.
So something that we focused on, again, as I said, the last question, we don't have that many organizations here, which has been kind of a difficulty for us. But something that we did focus on was we had a community organization start up here called Humboldt for Palestine. So we developed strong ties with them because they're doing work throughout the summer as well. So with the students that we do have, we're moving them towards community action during the summer and focusing more on that right now. And as I said at the end of my little spiel at the beginning, we're going to do a big statewide action that we're helping to organize. And personally, I think that's the route to go in, working on coalition work in the community, doing disruptions however you can in the cities. There's still tons of students who want to do things. There's still and like all kinds of organizations too, like SDSers, SJP, PYM. Like people want to do it. They want to do the work. They want to disrupt. People are still pissed off about what's happening in Gaza and Rafah. There's still a genocide going on. So I think we need to strike while the iron is hot. We need to keep that energy going and direct it at different events and disruptions where we're at. If you can do something bigger that'll disrupt them more, I say go for it. If you want to focus on like local stuff, that's great too. But definitely the student movement should now be involved in the community, I think, during this time.
All right. And we'll go next to Khalid and then Audari.
Rick already said a lot of what I was going to say, but like we are literally going to their houses and picketing outside their houses for hours. Like, no business as usual under a genocide. Like these people will not see rest. And they'll say things like, this is out of line, but it's like your support for genocide is out of line. Like we have the people, we're fighting the popular fight. we're moving it off campus. Some of it is like going to their houses and stuff. Some of it is going to meetings and events that the campus is hosting, and some of it is just helping out with the local coalition. So, yeah.
Right. Thank you, Khalid. And now we'll go to Audari.
Yeah, definitely want to, emphasize what the other two, panelists had said. Do whatever you can. Unite with the community forces. Some things you don't need a huge amount of people to be effective. Like this past Thursday, we disrupted the Board of Regents meeting with like 15 people. You can, if all you can do is chalk or do some banner drops or or wheat paste, then do that. Whatever you can, just do it. Definitely leading by example. Just because it's summer break doesn't mean the movement takes a break. So whether you unite with community forces or do your own thing, doing anything is, however small it may be, is better than nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have a question in the chat asking if there's a link to register for the June 24th March in the RNC online meeting. So if anyone has that information, please toss it in there. March on the RNC, March in the DNC, which are coming up very soon. All right, we'll go next to Lexi.
Hi, hello. So we've been having protests too. I'm in Nevada. We have UNLV, that's the college here. And one of the things I've noticed at UNLV is with our protest is the Red Desert Collective and PSL pass out like protesting kits, that come with things like basic medical aid, gas masks, things like that, so that the police are less effective when they try to break up protests. I was wondering if those kinds of kits have been designed elsewhere, like if y'all have been doing those too at y'all's protest, or if that's just a thing here in Nevada, because it seemed like a very good idea when I saw that. So I just wanted to bring it up.
So it's like a physical kit, like a box? Or like, is it papers? Ooh, I'll unmute you so you can answer my question.
Yeah, it's a physical kit, like a plastic box full of supplies.
Gotcha. All right. Do speakers have any response for that? Someone in the chat saying they've made physical handouts of guides. Oh, yep. Mira.
Yeah, and so like in Minnesota, we didn't experience anything with tear gas or anything. Honestly, I haven't seen tear gas used in Minnesota, thankfully, since the like 2020, 2021 uprisings. I don't know, I could be misremembering, but that wasn't really a threat here. What was a threat was sound cannons from the LRAD. And so in those cases, we did have people go out and they like purchased protective supplies. We had earplugs, we had some over-the-ear headphones, things like that. And overall, at the same time, like we had our big sound system to make announcements to the entirety of the encampment there, and like would make announcements of like, this is what to do in that situation and that sort of thing. And so it was sort of like, obviously things are different based on the specific conditions that you're in. And like I mentioned, we had like some activist skill trainings, things like that for civil disobediences, marshaling, just to try and prepare people the best that we could with the resources that we had. But yeah, I would say it definitely depends on the conditions of like the individual city that you're in and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and unmute you, Audari, because I see you have got a response.
Yeah, I typed it into the chat, but what we for sure do is, basic know your rights pamphlets or, an announcement beforehand. And if the situation warrants it, we'll hand out goggles, helmets, or things like that. But we're not handing those things out at just anything. It's like Mira said, go based on the conditions, and it's time and a place. Not every demonstration turns into something like that.
All right. Thank you, speakers. And we'll go next to Asher.
Yeah, I'm at NESU, so it's a conservative state, and we don't have huge capacity to do big action, but we have had some protests, uh, a couple on campus, but more in the communities. How can we take those like mobilization and turn it into like an organizing event to kind of like, because I feel like a lot of people when they go to protest, they kind of feel like this isn't really doing anything. You know, protesting in Fargo, North Dakota isn't making a difference for the people in Palestine. So how can we like kind of snowball that into more organizing and bigger actions?
Great question. How do we make it a prolonged fight? Yeah, Khalid.
Yeah, prolonged fight. That sounds like a campaign. The campaign method is what has really simplified organizing. At least here in Denver, SDS. Making like a general call and then having like a list of demands, and then just like making sure that like we're always like progressing the campaign. Having like having goals. Like we want to do this by the end of the semester. Just like campaign method with demands, and then call people to, and then a coalition too. You're not gonna be, if there's other orgs that are like all fighting for the same thing, you might just want to combine forces and stuff like that. And yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Khalid. Any more thoughts from speakers? You can use the mass line, build a prolonged fight, have demands, call meetings. We've got a great pamphlet on what the mass line is in our organization that can maybe be of help. All right, we'll go, if there's nothing more to say, we'll go to Linda.
Hi, everyone. First of all, as a Palestinian, I want to thank everybody on here for all the hard work you guys have been doing and continue to do. I'm sure even before October 7th. I am an alumni of CU Denver, where Khalid and our other comrades, student comrades, organize. And so I kind of want to talk about it from that perspective, if that's okay, a little bit. I met Khalid and the other students the first week after October 7th happened, and they had set up a rally on campus. And what I really want to emphasize is even prior to the encampment, I found that their work was super inspiring and effective. Even though it was on campus, they still found a way to pull in community members into the work that they were doing, whether it was through rallies or whether it was through sit-ins in front of the administrative building when they started working on the divestment piece. As a community member, like I have worked alongside Khalid and others in the organization to also kind of put the word out, mobilize as much as possible, and encourage community members to be a part of what they're doing. We have something here that my husband and I put together called This Week in Colorado. So that's another way that I would recommend that you guys as students maybe connect with your community members to get the word out on the things you're doing on campus, where community members could still partake in it. Obviously, it's not everything that you guys do, including your meetings. We can't be a part of that because we're not students, but there are things that we could be a part of as community members. And so I would get the word out there and try to see how you can get the people in your community and other coalitions, other organizations on your campus and even across campuses, because here in Colorado, we've worked hard to get students connected across campuses as well, to build that sort of unity and build a way, like a sounding board for people to connect over not just the encampments, but other work that people are doing and continuing to do. At one point in one day, I was blessed to visit like 4 encampments. We had 2 in Colorado Springs and 2 in Denver at one point at the same time. What I also want to emphasize is the kind of work that's done on campus can lend itself to also working on other things outside of the campus, whether it be marches and rallies. but also city council. Like we do have work around the city council here. And a few days after the encampment at Auraria came down, we had about nearly 30 students come out, which was really amazing to watch. They came out to the Denver City Council and spoke to the city council members and asked, talked about the Palestinian issue, but also asked for their charges to be dropped. And that's something we're mobilizing around on a weekly basis. In fact, this last week, a few of the city council members approached me after the meeting and were asking to just get an update on what was happening with the status of the students and community members who were arrested, and offered to help in any way to apply pressure so that the charges can be dropped. So that is something I'm working on with them, to provide them the means to be able to support the students and community members around that, because any pressure can help. Unfortunately, we do have the people that were arrested are still getting charges placed on them, and we're working with different people in the community to help those students and community members out, and faculty. There was faculty and staff too that got arrested, who were supporting at the time. But we're working on those as well. We show up to court almost daily to support the people that come, so that they're not feeling like they're doing this on their own. And we kind of divide up and help in that way as community members as well. So that's another way you can pull support from the community. But one last thing I want to mention about the encampment that I think you touched on a little bit, Rick, was one of the most beautiful things that happened at the encampment and has happened since this movement has started is, yes, the focus is on the atrocities and the horrible things that are happening in Gaza and the West Bank, where I'm from, because there are horrible things happening there too. To be clear, like my village gets attacked on a daily basis by the settlers. I've had family members get killed. And about a month and a half ago, we had somebody in our village get killed by a settler that just basically got to get back in their car and drive back to their settlement and not get held accountable for anything. But what I want to emphasize is the movement has also highlighted the local issues, whether it be the migrant issue or whether it be the unhoused. And so we've really been able to also mobilize around that. And when we go to city council, we talk about those things. We relate it back to the local issues. And we also add on the divestment piece. So that's been another thing that we have been able to highlight in what we do. But more importantly, I just felt like in the encampments, we were able to do that mutual aid and actually bring people together from different spaces, that obviously this is all interconnected and people are getting oppressed on so many levels in different ways. So I think that's another thing to definitely keep in mind as you guys are moving forward with what you do, is how can you connect it to the other things that are happening locally, and how can you support that? When we go to Denver City Council, we volunteer with mutual aid. They are set up in front of the city and county building, and we actually go and volunteer on a weekly basis. Some of us, before we go to enter the city council chambers, we volunteer for an hour and a half beforehand, serving meals and giving out clothing and helping in any way we can with our unhoused. So yeah, I think most importantly, I just want to say SDS Denver for me, and I did express this to some of the students, that they were already doing wonderful work. You guys were already doing great work prior to the encampment. The encampment was another way to highlight the work you guys were doing for a lot of maybe community members that were not aware prior. But I just want to thank you guys, because I know as students, you guys were already putting in that work and that time and that effort, and with a lot of good results and meaningful ways of expressing the need to support Palestine and the Palestinian people, even well before the encampments. And that was just the icing on the cake. And I really, really hope the students have the energy to go back in the fall and just do more. I was even joking with one of our encampments, like when I was helping him bring it down, I said, call me in a couple of days, let me know where you're going to pop up again, and I'll be happy to help you come set up again. So I just think it would be cool if everybody just kept popping up at different spots of the campus and kept all their administrators on their toes, you know, constantly. But thank you guys again, and thank you for sharing, you know, your stories around your encampments.
Thank you so much, Linda. Thanks for being on this webinar and your beautiful words. And yeah, I think, you know, do one of the, we'll just take one of the speakers wants to maybe speak to that point kind of briefly, or maybe if we just say thank you for being on the call and for your support, which is invaluable. And yeah, Khalid nodding his head. Yeah. No, thank you so much to everyone who played a part. And, you know, whether you were in the movement or not, y'all are on this webinar. I think fall will be, if what we're seeing plays out the way it looks, I think fall will be even bigger. Maybe this is the warm up, you know, and sure, they're suspending students or even expelling some students, but that's not stopping anyone. As far as I know. And then, you know, as we go ahead and say goodbye, just a reminder that June 24th, there is going to be the Coalition to March on the RNC is hosting an all-out for the March on the RNC online report and mobilization call, where we'll be planning concretely how to get there and what to do. So June 24th, a Monday. Just a final reminder, as we also go on to march on the DNC after that as well. But this one is in a month. So yeah, and everyone is welcome. Bring everyone you know. But thank you again, everyone, for being on this call. You know, the fight continues, and I think we've learned a lot of lessons in this movement, but we're not done. Like the speaker said earlier, it's just begun. So from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Good night, everyone. Thanks for coming out. Bye.